Masechet Baba Mesia Daf Samech Bet. Yesterday we saw a distinction between rebit kesusa or rebit deoraita. That's a regular normal case of I give you a loan and we make a fixed amount, kesusa, that you're going to have to pay. I'm giving you 100, you're going to give me back 120. That's prohibited mideoraita. That's the first half of the Mishnah, as opposed to the second half of the Mishnah, which give examples of avak ribit. That's a ribit, interest only midirabanan, where it's not a straightforward loan, but it's a sale and the price goes up, and cases like that. Okay, so now we're going to see an important question. If someone does pay interest, charge interest, do they need to pay it back? Amar Rabbi Elazar, Rebit kesusa yosa bedayanin, abak rebit ena yosa bedayanin. Rabbi Yochanan, Amar afilu rebit kesusa name ena yosa bedayanin. Rabbi Elazar says that if it's rebit oraita, then you have to pay it back, and you can take the person to court. He says, look, he took a rebit from me, and the malveh who collected rebit will have to pay that money back. However, if it's only to the banan, then you don't have to pay it back, and the judges aren't going to get involved and make a person pay it back either. Rabbi Yochanan, however, says even rebit oraita, while it's prohibited to pay it and prohibited to receive it, that's for sure. But once it's paid, then it does not need to be paid back, and therefore the judges are not going to force anyone to pay it back. It is a good idea to pay it back to fulfill your moral duty, bidei shamayim, but there's no legal monetary obligation to pay it back. It's not exactly like stealing because the person gave it over willingly, so it's different from just stealing, where of course you have to pay back. Here they violated a law of paying interest and taking interest. Now, okay, you violated the law. That's it. You made that sin. But you gave it willingly, so it's not stealing that you would have to pay back. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, my tamad Rabbi Yochanan. Now, what is the source of Rabbi Yochanan that you don't have to pay back money that you took with ribit? Amar kera beneshech tarbit v'tarbit lakach v'chai lo yichye et kol hatoevot ha'ele asa. It's a pasuk from Yechezkel. We don't often learn a halacha from Yechezkel, but here this is relevant. A person who gave interest or took interest, he will not live. Now, it doesn't mean literally you don't get capital punishment for taking interest, but the point is this is a very serious sin. This is an abomination. So, l'mitanitan v'lo lishabon. You see, Yechezkel said, this person, he deserves to die. Why so serious? Well, you're trying to help out a poor person. We're talking about loans back then generally, that I want to buy $1 billion building and I need investors for $100 million each, that kind of thing. We're talking about someone who's down and out, he's poor, he needs just get a loan so he can buy some seeds for his little field. So you're going to charge him interest, and anything that he grows, he can never get back on his feet. And so you're really mistreating him. You wouldn't do that to your biological sibling, charge them interest. You wouldn't treat them like that, and therefore don't treat other Jews like that either. So this is so serious that that's the punishment. Liable to death, as if, but it doesn't say anything about returning it. It's not about returning the money. It's that you shouldn't do it in the first place. Or another pasuk from Vayikra, at least is in the Torah, don't take interest and fear God. What does that mean? That you have to do it because you fear God, and make sure not to charge interest in the first place. That's what you should do, not charge interest. Doesn't say anything about returning it. Rava amar migufeh dikra shemi ya'aleh mot yumat amar bo yihiyeh hukshu malvei ribit l'shofchei damim ha'shofchei damim lo nitenu lishabon af malvei ribit lo nitenu lishabon. Rava says, I'm going to go back to that pasuk in Yechezkel. The rest of the pasuk says he should die, his blood is upon him. Why? Because those who charge interest, or lend with interest, are like murderers. The person that has to pay the interest, now he can't get back on his feet, he can die of starvation. So, literally or figuratively, you deserve death. You're draining him of everything of his life. And so this, just like if you actually murder someone literally, you can't bring him back to life. There's no way to undo that. So too, charging interest, it's not about undoing it. Now, of course, it's praiseworthy to undo it. And one of the commentaries on this pasuk, that to fear God means you should give back the money. It is a proper thing to do, but that the sin is taking it in the first place, and then there's that already concludes the sin. It's not about a monetary obligation because he gave it to you willingly, so we can't say that you have to give it back. So the fact that you don't have to give it back doesn't mean that it's less serious. If anything, this is very serious. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Mai ta'amad Rabbi Elazar. Okay, now we saw a source for Rabbi Yochanan. What's the source for Rabbi Elazar that you have to pay it back? Tamar kerav v'che achicha imach ahadar le ki hechi denechi. The continuation, the end of the pasuk that says don't charge interest is that your brother should live with you. Meaning that you should return it to him so that he can live. You did something bad, you took interest, and now, he's poor, he's back into poverty, but you want him to live a dignified life. So give the money back to him so that he can live. You did bad in the first place, but you can fix it. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan, what are you going to do with that pasuk that says allow him to live? The simple reading of the pasuk is don't charge interest in the first place to give him an opportunity to get back on his feet so he can live dignified with you. Okay, but anyway, Rabbi Yochanan, why not learn from there that you should also return it? Because if that's the whole point, that he should he needs that money to live well. So then if you took it, don't take it. If you took it, return it. No, Rabbi Yochanan uses pasuk for a different law. The famous case, here it is. If two people are walking on a road in the middle of nowhere, and one of them has a jug of water, only one has, and now if he shares it with his friend, they both will die in the desert. Neither of them will get to civilization. But if only one of them drinks, then there's enough water that one person can get to a settled area and he'll get more water, but the other person will die. What should he do? Darash ben Petoram mutav shishtu shenehem v'yamut al yedei echad mehem b'mitato shel chavero. Ben Petora said, better that they should both drink and both die. And if you're on the water, you can't go and see your friend dying. Can you imagine? You say, oh, listen, it's my water. Sorry, I like you a lot, nothing personal, but I'm not giving you my water. And you can actually literally watch him die when you have water and he's dying of thirst, right? At that moment, it's impossible. You're not allowed to do that. You can't stand by and watch your friend die. You have to share your water. Now, even though it's true, as a consequence, both people will eventually die. Okay, but you take each decision as it comes. This is not utilitarianism, the most good for the most people. This is not the most good for the most people. Both of them will die. But rather, this is called in a philosophy of ethics, deontological, right? There's just certain values that you can't violate, even though it means both will die. You can't watch your brother die. You have to share the water. Rabbi Akiva disagrees and uses pasuk to say you have to help your brother live with you. The key line is with you. You have to live first. Put on your own mask and only then put on the mask of your child in the airplane, right? You don't give away what you need to live to someone else, and that means you're going to die. No, you don't have any obligation to do that. It's a question if you even have a right to do that. Let's say I want to. Let's say I was with my son. I want my son to have the water. Or my good friend. He's an important guy. I want him to, I don't mind dying. Okay, that's a good question. But certainly you don't have to, if it's your water, you have to take care of yourself first. So Rabbi Yochanan uses this pasuk for a different matter, and therefore is not related to returning the beat. Now we're going to challenge Rabbi Yochanan from a baraita. Let's say a father dies and he bequeaths to his sons money that he gained illegally by charging interest. So even though the sons know that this exact money, dad got this by charging interest, nevertheless, the sons do not have to return it. Now, since the Braita emphasized that the sons don't have to return it, can't we infer from that the father would, if he was alive, would have to return it? That is the support for Rabbi Elazar, a challenge to Rabbi Yochanan. And the answer is, Bedinu davuhon name la mechayev lachazir v'aydi tekaba'ed mitne sefa. Hiniach lehem avihen para v'talit. V'chol davar mesuyam chayav lechayevin lachazir mipnei kebod abihem. No, in fact, the Braita thinks that even the father would not have to return it. So why does it say the sons don't have to return it? Just say nobody has to return it. Why are you going to the far case? Say the father doesn't have to return it, all the more so the sons don't have to return interest. Oh, the answer is because it wants to contrast the Resha with the Sefa, where the sons do have to return an item. What's that case? If a father leaves a cow or a garment that was ill-gotten, it was stolen property, or anything that's identifiable, a particular item that you can identify and say, that people will look at. So if the father, let's say, stole this garment, and now people know it's stolen. The father, of course, he has to return it. He didn't return it. And now the sons, well, if they're going to wear it, so technically they don't have to return it because this is that they inherited it. It's not their problem. However, they have to return it if it's a particular item. If it was cash, they wouldn't have to return it. But if it's an identifiable item, they have to return it because of the honor of their father. Because if they walk around wearing it, everybody will say, oh, look at that green and red striped thing. That belonged to someone else, and this guy's father stole it. So as he walks around, it will be identified, and everybody will then remember that their father was a thief, and therefore to protect the honor of their own father, they should return it to the rightful owner. So that's true for items. It's not true for cash or unidentifiable items where the children don't have a legal obligation, and it will not cause their father dishonor, so they don't have to return those things. Anyway, that's the main point of the Braita, is to teach us a case where the sons do have to return it. And so for parallelism, it teaches us in the Reshak, and it says the sons don't have to return it. But in fact, even the father would not have to return it, and that's how Rabbi Yochanan can explain this Braita. All right. And now, once we brought up this Braita, we have a side point. Do the sons now, for the honor of their father, they have to return it. Do the sons really have to worry about the honor of their criminal father who stole things? Who cares about someone's honor who's a criminal? We have a derasha that says you're not allowed to curse a leader among your nation. And from the word be'ammecha, we learn only immecha, if he is with you in Torah and mitzvot. If he follows the laws of the nation, then you're not allowed to curse him. But someone who violates the laws, who is a sinner, who is a criminal, then you don't have to worry about that person's honor. You can even dishonor them and curse them. So now this person's father is a criminal. He's a thief. So they should be able to keep, even if it's a specified item, like a garment that everybody knows belongs to someone else, and everybody walk around, oh, look at that garment. This guy's father, he was a big thief. He stole that thing. Good, let people say that. It's good to dishonor criminals. So why do they have to return it to worry about the honor of their father? כדאמר רבי פנחס משמד רבה, בשעשה תשובה, החנמה בשעשה תשובה. Oh, we're going to say what Rabbi Pinchas said in the name of Rava in a different context. He repented, and here also the father was a criminal and he stole some things, but then he made teshuvah. Since he made teshuvah, so we have to worry about his honor. Yasa teshuvah, my ba'e. Hold on, if the father made teshuvah, then he should have returned this garment. That's part of the teshuvah process. You can't make teshuvah if you didn't return it. Oh, he was in the process of making teshuvah. He didn't get a chance, right? He came, he said, I'm sorry, and all that. He made his vidui, I'm not going to do it again. And he had the garment in the trunk of his car. He was going to return it. But he died before he got a chance to return it. So that's the case that we're talking about when their sons have to show honor to their father and return it because of that. All right, now, next question. The Baraita says that thieves and people who lend money with interest, even if they collected it, they do have to return it. Now we have to clarify this baraita first. Gazanim, my afagav shegabu ika, I gezul, ila gezul gazanin karitehu. What does that mean? That thieves, even though they collected it, if they stole, they already stole it, so it's already in, they already have it. And if they didn't steal yet, then they're not thieves. So what does it mean if they collected? Rather, it's not two cases, but rather all one case. Thieves. What kind of thieves? Those who charge interest. It's ilgan, even though the other person gave it, but still they're not allowed to pay, and he's not allowed to collect. So they're taking money that they're not allowed to take. So even though they collect, they return, right? We don't say you're not allowed to collect, but once you collected, you keep it. No, you have to return it. So this is a proof for Rabbi Elazar and a challenge against Rabbi Yochanan. So we answer, Tana'ehi. In fact, you're right, this baraita follows Rabbi Elazar that you have to return it. But there's a machloket Tana'im, and so Rabbi Yochanan, although he'll disagree with this Tana, can follow a different Tana, the Tanya. Rabbi Nechemia, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov potrin tamaveh v'ta'areh mipnei sheyesh behen kum aseh. My kum aseh, la mishum damrinan lehu kumu ahaduru. This baraita says that we do not, according to these two Tanaim, we do not give a punishment to the malveh, who is receiving the payment, or the arev, a guarantor on the loan, because they have a positive commandment to do something. Well, what positive commandment? The mitzvah of don't take interest is a lo taseh, don't take interest. So what's the kum aseh? Is it not that they can fix the problem? If you violated and you received money, then you can fix the problem by returning it. So it's kind of like a lav hanitak le'aseh. And since they can do something about it and fix it, therefore they don't get a punishment. Instead, they return it. So you see that according to these two Tanaim, one must return interest. If you're the malveh and you collected interest, you have to return it. That is the opinion of Rabbi Elazar. Mikelad Tanakama sabar lav ben. But we can infer, since only these two Tanaim think that the Tanakama, the rest of the sages, agree with Rabbi Yochanan, or rather Rabbi Yochanan agrees with them, that you do not need to return. You could return it, but it won't undo the sin. And so there's no legal obligation to return it. So Rabbi Yochanan is following the other Tanaim of this baraita. So is that a good explanation of kum aseh? We say no. La mai kum aseh likroa shetara. Kum aseh doesn't mean that you can undo the sin by returning the money. Rather, it means that if there is a loan document, and in the loan document it says, you're going to pay me 100, I'm going to pay you back 120. So you want to, you know what you should do? Rip up the loan document. Once you pay, then that's a different story. This baraita is not talking about if you already paid, but rather if you made a loan document and you certified it with witnesses and signed it, so then you should rip it up. That's how you can undo it. So the malveh, he can undo his sin by ripping up the document, not after he already got paid. That's not the subject of this baraita. Now, we ask about this answer. Mai kasabar, ikasabar, shetaramed legabot kegabui dameh, ha'abadu isuraihu, ve'ilav kegabui dameh, ha'la abud ve'la kelum. There's two opinions about what a loan document, how it works. If I have an IOU, do we consider that since it's about to be collected, it could be collected anytime, so it's as if it's already collected? This is like a check nowadays. A check is really nothing more than an IOU that you can go take it to the bank, and the bank will take it from my account. Now, it's not actually paid now, but we consider that as if it's paid. Here, I gave you a check. See, I paid you. You can even transfer that check to someone else. It's kind of like takes on value. That's one opinion. The other opinion says no. An IOU is not like something collected. It's only a document that says you can collect as proof that there was a loan, but it's not like payment was actually transferred. So let's try out each one. If you say it's as if it's already paid, well then, he already violated the law. The malveh, once he signs this document that says, I give you 100, you're going to give me 120, and so now you have an IOU for 120, it's as if it's already paid. He already violated the law, so he deserves punishment. And if not, if an IOU is not like paying money, then he didn't do anything. Why would he deserve a punishment? He only said that you will pay me 120. Okay, so you agreed that you'll pay 120, but no money ever transferred. So then why would you even think that he would be liable for a punishment at that point? So the answer is Olam kasaban shtaramid legabot lav kegaboy dame pakamashmalan deshuma miletahi. In fact, we're going to follow the opinion that says an IOU is not like it's already paid. But we can learn from here that appraisal of the interest amount is a significant matter. Even just making a deal and saying, I'm giving you 100, you're going to give me 120, right? Right? And we appraise the value of the interest, and then you write that down and you agree to it. That already is a significant matter and already violates the law. You can get out of it by ripping up the document. It wasn't paid yet, so you can still wash yourself clean. Once it's paid, that's it. You already violated the law, and there's nothing you can do. Of course, you can make teshuvah, but the point is that he would still deserve punishment for having violated the law. Bishma kol hu abud maaseh el ha'edim ma'abud el shema mina the shema miletahi shema mina. And we can confirm this from a Mishnah later on in the Masechet that says the following violate a law ta'aseh. Violating a law ta'aseh generally would get lashes. So it's the lender and the borrower and the guarantor and the witnesses. Now I understand all of them. They're doing something, right? They're involved. They're giving money, taking money, guaranteeing the money. But the witnesses, they're just standing by watching. What did they do? You're going to give the witnesses lashes for just standing by? What do we see here? We see that the evaluation of the interest, that is a significant matter. And the witnesses, right, they're saying, oh, how much is that going to be? You agree, right? He's going to pay back 120, right? You see that he agrees to that. So even just setting the amount of interest, that already is a violation of the law, and all the parties that are involved will get lashes. So we see that is a proof that, in fact, the kum aseh that we're talking about here was talking about there's something you can do about it. So this is talking about a case where they didn't pay yet. So therefore, you can't learn anything from here about if you paid, do you have to return or not. This is talking about if you didn't pay, but they wrote a document. Then the malveh and the arev, they don't get lashes just yet because they can always just rip up the document and say, okay, forget about that, nothing happened. And that there's machloket about that. And the other opinion says, no, even though you wrote so once you wrote the document, that's it. That's already the violation. So that's the machloket, but it's actually not relevant to the machloket between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar. Amar Rav Safra, kol she'ilu bedinehem mos'im miloveh lamalveh, bedinenu machazrin mimalveh laloveh. Kol she'ilu bedinehem en mos'im miloveh lamalveh, bedinenu en machazrin mimalveh laloveh. Rav Safra has an interesting observation. It's his comparative law. He lives in Bavel, so he's comparing the Babylonian Sasanian law, presumably, with Jewish law. And he says, in any case where in the non-Jewish courts they would remove money from the borrower and give it to the lender and said, borrower, you didn't pay this, you have to pay that, you have to pay this amount. In that case, we're dealing with like interest, right? In their laws, you'd have to pay interest, and they would force the borrower. You didn't pay the interest, you have to pay it. In our law, we actually would return it from the malveh to the loveh, right? And we say, oh, he paid you the interest, oh, you have to give it back. So this would follow to be Elazar. And on the flip side, this makes it a paradox. Anything that in their law they would not force the borrower to pay the lender, in other words, presumably it's less important, it's less of a stringent case, then in our law we would not make the malveh return it to the loveh. Which is curious because you think if there's more reason why the loveh should keep it in their laws, so then we would say even in their laws the loveh doesn't have to pay. So we would think in our laws you should definitely make the malveh give it back, but it's not the case, and that's the kind of paradox of ribit. So while the non-Jews do not have a law of ribit and they make one pay, we say that's precisely the prohibition and you have to return. Where if it's a lesser thing and they say you don't even have to pay it, so that means in our case, in our law, it wouldn't be ribit, and that's why he doesn't have to return. All right, so that's the general overview. But now we're going to, before we give the cases of where this does apply, we're going to ask questions about where Rav Safra's rule does not apply. Amar Abaye Rav Yosef uchlalahu. Abaye asked Rav Yosef, is this really a general rule? I have an exception. Se'ah means if I give you one se'ah of wheat, and I say, look, in 6 months, you give me back also one se'ah of wheat. This is permitted midoraita ba'asasur miderabanan, because the price of se'ah in the meantime may go up, and I'm giving you something and you're returning back something more. Now, in their law, you'd say, well, you have to pay the whole thing, right? If you gave a se'ah, and now you said you're going to give back a se'ah, so then the loveh certainly has to give the malveh a full se'ah. And yet, in our law, since this is only ribit de rabanan, or only avak ribit, we would not, let's say the price did go up, we would not tell the malveh, oh, he gave you a whole se'ah of wheat and the price went up. You have to give the loveh back something. We would not say that. So you see that this doesn't fit into Rav Safra's rule, because here in their laws they make the borrower pay, and in our laws we don't make him pay it back. So no, in their laws and the non-Jewish law, they wouldn't consider this a case of a loan. And Rav Safra's rule is only within the genre of loans. That's where these two rules apply. But in the case where I give you one se'ah and you give me back a se'ah, they didn't consider that a loan, but rather a deposit. Here, I'm giving you one se'ah, hold this for me. Now, in the meantime, the difference between deposit and a loan is that a loan you can use. So that's why in Jewish law we would say that is a loan, because you're going to eat that wheat, and then you're going to get some wheat later on, and you're going to return it to me. But in their law, they don't make that distinction, and they call this a deposit, and therefore I gave you an item, and you're going to give me back the same amount of that item. And so, since they don't consider it a loan, so that's not. It doesn't violate Rav Safra's rule. Amar le Ravina Rav Asher, v'harei mashkanta bela nechaita, debedinehem mosi'in miloveh la malveh, ubedinenu en machazin mimalveh la loveh. Another challenge of Ravina asked Rav Asher, what about a mashkon? Mashkon means a deposit. Let's say I come to you and I say, can I borrow $1 million? You say, fine, but you need a deposit. Okay, so listen, I have a vineyard. I'll give you this vineyard and you can use it, and you can eat the grapes and everything in the meantime. This is going to be for 1 year loan. Okay, in the meantime, you go and you eat the grapes. You eat $100,000 worth of grapes on my vineyard. And now the time comes to pay back, and says, oh, you lend me $1 million? I give you back $1 million. So this is a mashkon, mashkanta, belo nachaita, but without deduction. Now really, since you ate $100,000 worth of grapes, I should only pay you back $900,000. And that would be equaled what I gave. That would be no interest. But here's the case: I pay you back $1 million, and you took the grapes in the meantime and did not deduct from the total amount of the loan. And so in this case, in their law, we would say, I have to pay the whole thing, right? So what? Who cares about the grapes? I have to pay the entire amount. In our law, so if you come ask the rabbis, he would say, listen, don't pay $1 million, pay only $900,000, because he already took $100,000. However, this is not considered ribit de oraita. It wasn't set from beforehand. It wasn't necessarily true that the lender was going to eat the grapes, and therefore we say, if I did pay the $1 million, the rabbis are not going to force the malveh to give back money to the loveh. So you see, this violates Rav Safra's rule, because here in their law they will make the borrower pay, and yet in our law we do not make the malveh pay it back. And the answer here is also that in their law, they would not consider this a loan. Rather, they would consider this to be a sale. Basically, I sold you my vineyard for $1 million. So I got the $1 million, you got the vineyard. And so now it's yours and you eat it. And then later on, I'm buying it back. Since they don't consider this to be a case of a loan, so therefore, this doesn't violate the rule. Rav Safra's rule only applies to loans. Okay, so if those two cases are out, those are interesting cases. So which cases does Rav Safra's rule apply to? What is he teaching us? He's coming to teach us as follows. In any case where in their law they would make the borrower pay the malveh. In our law, we would say you have to return it. This is talking about fixed interest loan, a regular deoraita law, where I paid you, and we agreed $120. I'll give you 100. I'll lend you 100. You have to pay me 120. In their law, interest is permitted. So of course the court would say you have to pay the whole thing back. In our law, we say even if you paid, then the malveh has to give that back. So we're following here to be Elazar that says someone who collects interest does have to pay it back. And the other side, called she'ilu b'dinehem en mosin b'dinenu en machazirin rebit mukdemet rebit me'ocheret. And what is the case of the second part of Rav Safra's statement, that if in their laws they would not make the loveh pay, in our laws you would not have to return? This is talking about a case of prior interest or subsequent interest. This would be like, let's say, yesterday I gave you a gift of $100. So here's a gift, a birthday, whatever. And then today I say, hey, can you lend me $100? Can you lend me $1,000? And I'll give you back $1,000. So that's not exactly interest, because maybe I just gave you a gift yesterday because I felt like giving a gift. Maybe it was your birthday, maybe it wasn't. But this is kind of like interest, because it seems like I'm preparing you, I'm giving you the interest up front, but not calling it interest, I called it a gift. But so this is a prohibited midrabanan. Similarly, at the back end, let's say I borrow $1,000, and then I give you back the $1,000. After I paid you back, the next day I say, oh, you know what? I want to give you a gift. Just a thank you token, for a special occasion. So I'm paying the interest. I didn't build it into the loan. We didn't fix a price to begin with. So it's not asur midoraita, but it's still asur midrabanan. Because depending on one's intention, exactly, was this really connected to the loan or not? So this would be prohibited if it seems like it is connected to the loan. So in this case, since it's only midrabanan, if you're not allowed to do it, but if you did it and I gave you that gift, you would not have to return it. Everybody would agree with that. And in their laws, they would also say, well, you can't demand it. Well, let's say I gave you 1,000, you give me back 1,000. Okay, we're good. You can't come demand and say, oh, hey, I think you should give me a gift right afterwards, the next day. So this is a case where in their laws, they would not require it. And in our laws, if someone gave it, one would not return it. And so that's the chidush of Rav Safra. We now come and analyze the next part of the Mishnah, which was an example of avak ribit, avit rabanan, and it was a complicated case. So right now we're understanding the case as buying futures. So I come in and say, listen, I'd like to buy a cord of wheat. We look, what's the market price? And we see that it's 25 dinar for a cord. So I give you 25 dinar, and now I says I don't want it now. I just want to lock in the price. And so when I want it later, you'll give me a cord of wheat. And so then 6 months later, the price goes up to 30 dinar. So I could take my wheat now. That would be totally permitted because I pre-bought it, so it's like it's mine. And that was the market price. And even if you didn't have it in your storehouse, you could have taken that money and bought it and stored it up. And so there is no problem there. But now I tell you, listen, I want that wheat because I want to sell it and buy wine. I'm going to get 30 dinars worth of, I can sell it for 30, and I can get 30 dinars worth of wine. And then you say, listen, instead of paying cash, I will transfer that payment of wheat into money, 30 dinar. But I'm not going to give you money either. I will owe you 30 dinar worth of wine, and come collect wine whenever you want. Is that allowed? Well, the Mishnah says if you have wine in your storehouse, then it's okay. But if you don't have wine in your storehouse, then that is not proper. That's avak ribit. So now the Gemara is going to ask, and so what if you don't have wine? Why should that be a problem? V'hatanya, en poskin al perot ad sheyaseh ashar. Yaseh ashar poskin. Af al pi she'en lazeh, yesh lazeh. We say, okay, you cannot pre-buy buy futures of produce until there's a market price. But once there is a market price, then you can do so. So here we should say the same thing. Originally, I paid 25 for a cord. Okay, the price went up, but that was the market price. So now you owe me a cord of wheat. Now we're saying that cord of wheat, what's it worth? 30. Let's make believe that we're making that you're paying me the wheat, and I can sell it back to you for 30 dinar. So this would be the same thing. So now I have 30 dinar with you, and what's the market price of the wine? Let's say the wine market price is fixed, a fixed amount. So then that should be also okay. I'm basically just taking that original sale of the futures of wheat, and now I'm coming to collect the wheat, and I'm taking that value of the wheat, which is 30 dinar, and with that value of 30 dinar, it's as if I'm giving it to you now and saying I want wine at the market price, and I want to lock in the market price now. And even if you don't have wine, that should be permitted because I am locking in the market price. So what's the difference whether you have wine or not? Good question. Amar Rabba matintin beba lacho b'dmehen askinan. Rabba explains that this Mishnah is talking about a case where I'm going to incur a debt for their value. In other words, when I'm buying futures, that is a case where I'm giving you cash right now. Like in the case of wheat, I'm giving you 25 dinar and I'm locking in a price and you have to give me a cord. But in that case, I'm giving you money. That's okay. But in this case, what happens is the original pre-buy, that's permitted because I'm giving you cash at that point. But when I come back later and they say, listen, you owe me a quart of wheat. And you say, okay, you know what? Let's say instead of a quart of wheat, I'll give you 30 dinar. This is okay, fine. You owe me 30 dinar, right? And now we say that 30 dinar, I want you to pay me whenever I want. In wine, I'm going to lock in the price right now. So in this case, I am pre-buying, but I'm not giving you cash at the time of the pre-buying. I am using a loan because you owe me 30 dinar worth of wheat. So you owe me 30 dinar, and I say, use that loan, right? Use that loan to pay me in wine. But then if the wine goes up, so now this is a problem because now I'm benefiting from a loan. So that's the fundamental difference between buying futures, when I'm paying you now, but it's a sale, right? I'm buying that wheat. And if you have wheat, then for sure it's good. Even if you don't have wheat, you can go and buy it. That's fundamentally different from a case where I'm not giving you money at this point to buy that future, but rather you owe me 30. You owe me a quart of wheat, which is worth 30. So you owe me 30 dinar. And now I'm saying, you know what, take that 30 and lock in a price. Use that to buy futures. You're using a loan to buy futures. If that goes up, then I'm getting more. And so that is, although it's not fixed midoraita interest, but it is the Rabbanan interest. And so that Rabbi explains that's the case. And we have a Braita that backs us up. Let's say someone is owed 100 dinar. And the malveh goes to the lovez threshing floor and says, I demand, give me my money now because I need to go buy wheat. So I need the 100 dinar so I can go buy wheat. Now, this is in the borrower's threshing floor, which is full of wheat that the borrower has. So if the borrower says, listen, I have lots of wheat here, and so I will sell you this wheat at the current market price right now, and then I will give you the wheat within the next 12 months. This is prohibited because there is no isad, there is no money that's going into his possession. If the same guy who was the malveh, if there was no loan before, and he says, listen, here is 100 dinar, I want to buy futures of your wheat and come collect it later, that would be permitted because you're buying it now, and even though you're not taking it into your possession, you're buying it at this point, and the other guy is just basically holding it for you. So if the price goes up, that's okay. But here, because it starts off as a loan, and no money is being transferred at the time of the sale of the sales for the futures, then that's prohibited. So you see, that's the same case that Rabbah says our Mishnah is talking about, and that's why in our Mishnah it is prohibited. Okay, Amar le'Abaye, Idelaki saro haba liyado, mai irya en lo afilu yesh lo nameh. Abaye asks a tough question. If the problem is that it's buying futures but without a transfer of cash, you're buying futures with a loan, and that's the problem, then why does the Mishnah only say it's a problem if the seller doesn't have wine? Even if the seller has wine, it would still be a problem, right? Because it's the same thing. And in this case of the Braita, the borrower has wheat. He has wheat there. And nevertheless, we say it's not allowed because I'm buying futures not with cash, but rather with a loan, even if you have wheat right there. And so the same thing in the Mishnah's case. If we did this thing, I bought the 25 for I gave you 25 dinar to buy the futures of a quart of wheat, and now now it goes up to 30, and so now it says, okay, you owe me 30. You know what? I'll collect it in wine. Even if you have wine, I am buying futures with a loan, and that is also not good. So Abaye says, I don't understand your explanation, Rabbah, because even if you had wine, it still wouldn't be okay. Ela Amar Abaye. Abaye now is going to give a totally different explanation of our Mishnah. Let's see what the case is, and then we'll see how it fits into the wording of the Mishnah. Matnitin kedatene Rav Safra b'rebit de Chia. We're talking about a rebit of the type that was taught about in the school of Rabbi Chia, which is rebit Rabbanan. But here's the interesting case: Tetane Rav Safra b'rebit de Rabbi Chia. Yesh devarim shemutarim v'asurim mipnei haramat rebit. He taught that there are some things that are biblically permitted, but it's a workaround. It's a loophole of rebit, and basically you're trying to take ribit, but you're using a loophole to try to trick the system. What's an example? Kesar. Amar lo halbeni maneh. Amar lo maneh en li chitin b'maneh yesh li. Shani noten lecha. Natan lo chitin b'maneh v'chazar l'kacha nemenu b'esrim v'arba sela. Mutar v'asur lasot ken mipnei ha'aramat ribit. A borrower comes and says, lend me 100 dinar. And the lender says, listen, I don't have 100 dinar. Truth is, he does have it. We'll see in a second. But he says, I don't want to give you 100. I don't have 100 dinar. But you know what? I have wheat that's worth 100 dinar. Maybe he just wants to unload that wheat. Okay, so he gives them 100 dinar worth of wheat. So far, so good. Now, this borrower, he doesn't actually want the wheat. He needs cash, and he's willing to take a discount for the cash. If this borrower would go to another merchant and said, listen, I have wheat here. It's worth 100 on the market price, but I need the money right away. I'm willing to sell to you for 96. And he would take 96 from that other guy, and that would be permitted. He could do that. And then at a later time, he would pay back the original lender 100. If he did that, it would be permitted. But what if that third party is not a third party, but the lender himself? So that's what he does. He goes and he takes the same same amount of wheat that he just got, and he sells it back to the lender for 25 selah, which is 96 dinar, right? So the lender said, listen, I don't have 100 dinar, take wheat instead. But then 5 minutes later, hey, you want to buy this? He gives it to him, right? Here's the loan. And then 5 minutes later, the borrower says, you want to buy this for, I'll give you a good price. I'll give you a cheap price. I mean, you can do that to a third party. But here's the problem. So then he says, okay, he buys it back for 96. Now, the borrower walks away with 96 dinar. And at a later time, he'll have to pay back 100. You see the problem? Now, it's not technically a problem because on a Doraita level, okay, they made a loan. Here's 100 worth of something, and he's giving back 100. In the meantime, they had a side business deal. So on a Doraita level, the interest is not built into the loan. They didn't set it from beforehand. But this seems to be a backdoor way of collecting interest without calling it interest. You're calling it a good deal on a sale. So that's the case that we are talking about here in our Mishnah. Hachaname, kegon damar halveni sheloshim dinarim. Amar le sheloshim dinarim en li, chitin b'shloshim dinarim yesh li, shani noten lecha. A borrower comes and says, can I borrow 30 dinar? The lender says, I don't have 30 dinar, but I have wheat that's worth 30 dinar, and I'll give it to you. Good. So he gives it to him. 5 minutes later, the borrower says, listen, I have this wheat here. I'll sell it to you at a discount. He says, okay. And the lender buys it back for 25 dinar. So now the lender has all his wheat back. The borrower has 25 coins, which he's happy with because he needed 25 dinar. But at a later time, he's going to have to pay back 30. So he got 25 and he's paying back 30. Now, it's not a fixed interest. They didn't set this from before. He got 30 worth of wheat, so he got that. But in the meantime, they made a tricky sale. Now, here's what the chidush of the Mishnah. If then the lender says, listen, borrower, you owe me 30 dinar, I'm coming to collect it. Let's say a week later, I'm coming to collect that 30 dinar. I want it because I want to buy wine. Now the borrower says, listen, instead of taking the money back, why don't you can take wine from me. You can lock in a price of wine with me and I will give you wine. So if he has wine, then that's okay. That's totally permitted because in this case it doesn't look like a rebit. The problem of Rabbi Chiya's case over here is that it just looks too much like a rebit. It looks like it because he walked away with 25 dinar of cash and he's paying back 30 of dinar of cash. That's what makes it look bad, even though technically it's not rebit. However, if he walks away with he got 30 worth of wheat. And then they did a business deal in between. And later on, he pays back some wine. And it's 30 dinar worth of wine. And so with the fact that in the meantime they did a business deal, it's not as clear that this is ribit, and therefore it doesn't look like ribit, and it's permitted. That's if he has wine, so then he can give it to him now, he can give it to him later, that's okay. However, if the borrower does not have wine, well then he's giving him back money. And because he doesn't have the wine that he can say this is yours now, and so since he's paying him back with money, that's the same as Rabbi Chiya, and that's prohibited because that looks like interest. He got wheat, but then he sold it and got 25 dinar, and now he's giving back 30 dinar. Now, it could be he could go later and buy wine, but by that time the price is going up, and he's going to have to pay more. So it's basically the same as giving him cash now. And so that is where it looks like ribit, and that Abaye explains is why there's a difference between if he has wine, then he's giving back wine. Okay, he got produce, he's giving back produce. That doesn't look like ribit. But if he doesn't have wine, that means he got 30 dinar worth of produce. Yeah, it's true, but then he turned it into cash of 25, and now he's paying him back 30 in cash because he doesn't have wine. That's the problem of ribit. Amar le Rava, ihachi ten li chitai, demeh chitai mi ba'ele. So Rava asks, if this is the scenario as you said, then how come in the Mishnah it says, give me my wheat? Let's look back at the original Mishnah, right? This is a case where he bought wheat for a dinar, a zahab for 1 cord, that's 25, and that was the market value, and then it became 30. And he says later on, give me my wheat that I pre-bought, right? I bought the futures of it. Give me my wheat. However, how could this doesn't make sense in your scenario because he already bought the wheat back. Remember, he bought it back right away. Rather, it should say, give me back the value of my wheat that I gave you. I gave you 30 dinar of wheat, so give me back the money, the value of it. That's what it should say. And so Abaye answers, Teneh demechitai. Okay, change the word into demechitai instead of tenlichitai. That's no different. Okay, next question. Shani mochran, that I want to sell. What do you mean that I want to sell? It should be that I already sold you, right? The sale already happened back then at the time of the loan, when he gave him the wheat, and then he bought it back right away for a cheaper price. Okay, change this also. Teneh shemechatim lecha, that I already sold you. Next question. Harechitecha asuyot alai b'shoshim dinarin. When the Mishnah says, all right, your wheat, we'll say now, it's the market price now, we'll establish it at 30 dinarim. So that's the amount you owe me because the price went up. That's in Rava's definition. But according to Abaye's explanation of the case, it's not that now it's 30 dinarim. That was the original loan. Remember, the borrower says, hey, can you give me 30 dinarim? He says, oh, I don't have dinarim. I'll give you wheat instead. So that was the original loan was 30. You wouldn't use the language of, we'll establish it now at the current market price of 30. Oh, we can understand the Mishnah. We can fit it in. What he means is at the value of the wheat that I originally gave you, which was for a loan of 30 dinar. All right, we can fit that in. Okay, so the case concludes and says, I'll give you wine instead, and he doesn't have wine. Hold on. This whole scenario doesn't make sense with the opening of the case, where at the time that the buyer comes, he wants to buy the futures, and at that time the cord of wheat is worth 25, and that's the market value. But in your scenario, Abaye, that was never the market value. You never had a case of that. He's pre-buying, and that was the market value. In your case, he wanted 30, so he gave him 30 of wheat, and then bought it back for a little cheaper. So you can't understand this line at all, and there's no response to this, and therefore Rava is going to offer a new interpretation, yet another one that we will leave for tomorrow. Baruch Adonai Olam, Amen ve'amen.